Hi, and welcome to Bringing Your Diligent Recruitment Plan to Life, ideas and tools to support comprehensive diligent recruitment planning and program implementation. I'm Jill Marshall-May, Director of the National Resource Center for Diligent Recruitment at Adopt US Kids. As I typically say, I'm really excited about this webinar, but I think I'm even more excited about this one because I really believe that having a comprehensive diligent recruitment program is crucial for helping child welfare systems improve permanency and placement stability for children and youth in foster care. This webinar is going to emphasize the benefits of implementing an active, comprehensive diligent recruitment program and to share ideas for how to build a diligent recruitment program in your child welfare system. So I really want to talk a little bit about what we're saying when we talk about comprehensive diligent recruitment program. We're going to highlight the importance of moving from having a written diligent recruitment plan to having a diligent recruitment program that you can continue to assess, develop, and revise based on data, feedback loops, and shifting needs. So we're trying to really get away from the days of writing our plans for the CFSP, for the Children and Family Services Plan, and putting it on the shelf and referring back to it every year when we have to update it for the APSR. So really writing a plan that's in your staff's hands, that is referred back to, that your stakeholders are aware of, and that really can guide your practice moving forward. So we're going to have two presenters on today's webinar, and they actually are two of my very favorite people, Alicia Grow, consultant for the NRCDR, and Amy Martin, Permanency Program Manager for the state of Missouri. So before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. Before we dive into today's presentations, we want to go over a few housekeeping. This webinar is 1.5 hours long with time at the end for us to respond to your questions. We'll record the webinar and archive the audio and PowerPoint presentation on our website at nrcdr.org. For this webinar, we've muted your lines, but we do want to hear from you, and we hope that the webinar will be interactive and responsive to your questions. We will ask poll questions during the webinar and ask for your participation. On the next slide, we'll show you how you can use the chat feature to ask us questions. At the end of the webinar, we'll have a brief evaluation form. Please stay on to complete the evaluation questions so that we can use your feedback to inform future webinars. Again, although your lines are muted during this webinar, we do have ways for you to submit questions or let us know if you need help. As you can see on the screenshot, you can use the raise your hand feature in the left-hand corner. You can also use the chat feature to submit questions throughout the webinar. We'll collect all those questions, and then at the end, we'll have our presenters answer those questions. You can also chat in questions if you're having technical difficulties. We do have somebody on the line providing technical troubleshooting tips for us on today's webinar. So today's agenda is listed on the screen today. Again, we'll talk about comprehensive diligent recruitment. We're going to hear from Amy from the state of Missouri and what they've done in diligent recruitment planning. We'll talk about diligent recruitment plan development and program implementation. And we'll hear more from about diligent recruitment planning from Missouri. And then at the end, we'll have resources to support your diligent recruitment work. And then we'll end with questions and answers. So before we begin our presentation, let's start off with a poll question to get a better sense of your level of familiarity with your diligent recruitment plan. So this question is, how familiar are you with your state, tribe, or territory's diligent recruitment plan? And the answers really are very familiar, somewhat familiar, aware we have a plan but unfamiliar, with detail. So you're aware that you have a plan but unfamiliar of the details, and then you didn't know you had a diligent recruitment plan. Very familiar, somewhat familiar. You're aware you have one but unfamiliar with the details and didn't know you had a plan. So we'll give everybody just a little bit to answer those questions. All right, let's go ahead and close the poll and see what we've got. Oh, great. So a little bit all over the board. So we really hope that during today's presentation that those of you that are aware you have a plan but unfamiliar of what's in it, and those that didn't know you had a diligent recruitment plan, will really know your role in diligent recruitment planning. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia, who's going to get us started.
Thanks, Jill. As Jill mentioned before, I am Alicia Grow. I'm a consultant with the National Resource Center for Diligent Recruitment at Adoptive Kids. And I hope that after my presentation, I'm still one of Jill's favorite people. So we'll see how this goes. So as Jill has mentioned, we really want to talk today about comprehensive diligent recruitment. And comprehensive diligent recruitment is more than just working hard at recruiting families for children in foster care. It really goes beyond that. You've probably heard about the requirements under the Multi-Ethnic Placement Act, or MIPA, about diligent recruitment. And those requirements are certainly important and are definitely included in what we're talking about today. However, diligent recruitment that's truly comprehensive goes beyond those requirements, and it really seeks to recruit, prepare, and support a pool of families who can meet the needs of all of the children in foster care. It involves building in approaches for using data to guide your planning and implementation of recruitment efforts. And comprehensive diligent recruitment also involves building a child welfare system infrastructure that is needed for recruiting and sustaining a sufficient pool of families, such as approaches for training staff and stakeholders, reducing barriers for prospective families, and having the capacity to make placements across jurisdictional boundaries. So now we're going to do another poll question. For this one, we're asking what elements are part of your child welfare system's current diligent recruitment plan? Do you have procedures to address the items that are listed on your screen? I won't read them all to you, but you can check all that apply. And one of the options is none of the above. Another option is that you didn't know your child welfare system had a diligent recruitment plan. So we'll give you a moment. Please check off any of the elements that are included in your diligent recruitment plan. And we know this poll may take a little bit longer since it's multiple options for your response. Still seeing a lot of answers coming in, so let's give it another 15 or 20 seconds. All right, let's go ahead and close the poll. And you see we have quite a mix of what is included in diligent recruitment plans. Many of you have the procedures for just training families on trauma. That's really great to see. And procedures for data on child characteristics. That's a key part of being able to plan the data-driven diligent recruitment program. So that's great to see. So as we asked a little bit about what elements are in your diligent recruitment plan, we want to talk a bit about what all the elements are that go into truly comprehensive diligent recruitment. The Federal Children's Bureau has identified 18 elements of comprehensive diligent recruitment. And don't worry, I'm not going to read all of them to you, but we have them on the next few slides to give you a sense of what all is involved in developing a comprehensive, multifaceted approach to diligent recruitment. So we'll scroll through these briefly just so you can see them. As you'll see as we scroll through these, diligent recruitment involves taking data-driven approaches to understanding who the children in your foster care system are and what their needs are, who the families are that you need to recruit and support to meet those children's needs, and strategies for recruiting, responding to, preparing, and supporting those families. It also involves building ongoing mechanisms for reviewing and analyzing data, understanding where children are entering foster care, reducing barriers for prospective parents, partnering with stakeholders, and other key elements. So I know that's a lot of elements that we just showed you and scrolled through very quickly. We do have a publication on our website that is called What is Diligent Recruitment? And it contains an outline of all of the elements of comprehensive, multifaceted diligent recruitment, as well as listing the specific diligent recruitment effort elements that are required in a diligent recruitment plan as part of your Child and Family Services Plan and Annual Progress and Services Report that your child welfare system submits to the Children's Bureau. We'll remind you again at the end of the webinar about how to find things on our website, but we do have that resource available online. Now that I may have overwhelmed you with this list of everything that goes into truly comprehensive diligent recruitment, I want to share some good news about the benefits of addressing all of those components. Ultimately, comprehensive diligent recruitment can help child welfare systems achieve better outcomes and better experiences for children in foster care, including those waiting to be adopted. The overall purpose of diligent recruitment is to build a pool of foster, adoptive, and kinship families who can meet the needs of children in care. By having a sufficient, supported pool of families, it means that you will have appropriate placement options for all of the children in care, which leads to improved placement stability and permanency. For example, with this sufficient pool of families, you would have placement options that would let you keep sibling groups together and let you keep children in the same school even when they enter foster care or move placements. It would let you have placement options with families who can meet children's special medical and behavioral needs as well. This means that you're more likely to have the first placement be a good fit and less likely to have to move children multiple times. Diligent recruitment can also offer benefits for child welfare systems and the people working in them. By having a sufficient pool of families, workers will have more placement options that can meet the needs of children rather than struggling to find the appropriate placement. This means that workers wouldn't be as likely to face a crisis in terms of trying to find placements for children and are likely to experience fewer emergency placement changes. We know that the process of developing a comprehensive diligent recruitment plan and program can seem complex. And recognizing that the child welfare field could benefit from a framework for doing this kind of planning, we developed our Diligent Recruitment Navigator as a resource for agencies to use to structure planning, exploration, stakeholder engagement, and data analysis. This Diligent Recruitment Navigator is essentially a discussion guide with suggested discussion questions related to each element of comprehensive diligent recruitment and suggested stakeholders to include in those discussions about each element. Because we know for sure that planning and implementation of diligent recruitment is affected by a child welfare system structure and other important factors, the Navigator is set up to be a customizable tool with additional discussion questions and suggested stakeholders added to your Navigator depending on the customization options that you select. For example, there's different content depending on whether your system is a state or tribal child welfare system or a territory child welfare system. For state systems, there is customized content for county-administered systems and state-administered systems. In addition, the Navigator offers customized questions and suggested stakeholders to engage if you have a Title 40 waiver related to recruitment, are partially or fully privatized, have a diligent recruitment grant, or have a consent decree that relates to recruitment. Because we really are committed to making the Navigator a useful tool for the child welfare field, we engaged multiple child welfare systems and leaders to get their input and feedback on both the content and the overall approach for the Navigator as we developed it. Following our own suggested approach for child welfare systems to seek stakeholder input in developing a comprehensive diligent recruitment plan and program, we used a similar approach to develop this tool, and we really saw great benefits from getting this kind of feedback and stakeholder input. The end result was a diligent recruitment navigator that looked quite different from what we started out developing. And we truly believe that the final product is much more useful and valuable to the field thanks to this input. You can probably tell that our NRC is very excited about the Diligent Recruitment Navigator, and we are, because we know it is helpful to multiple child welfare systems. It's a flexible tool that can be used in many ways and at multiple points throughout planning and implementation processes. I'll talk more about some of the ways that the Navigator can support child welfare systems efforts later in this webinar. So now we want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing for some examples from the field and how people are approaching diligent recruitment planning and implementation. We see multiple child welfare systems demonstrating creative approaches to developing comprehensive recruitment plans and building ways to make those plans really living documents, like Jill talked about, that guide the work and that get adjusted as needed. I want to share some of the examples that we know of from around the country. Some states have brought together large groups that included multiple stakeholders to discuss the state's diligent recruitment needs, what the data reveals, opportunities for new partnerships, and ways to build a strong diligent recruitment program. These stakeholder groups that people have convened have included private agency partners, representatives from tribes, representatives from faith groups and faith communities, foster, adoptive, and kinship families, birth parents, federal regional office partners, staff from data or continuous quality improvement units, and others. Having these diverse groups involved in in-depth discussions about diligent recruitment helps states ensure that the diligent recruitment plan truly is comprehensive. By engaging these stakeholders in the planning stage, these states also help build an extended team of people who have a strong interest in the ongoing implementation of the plan and who can help identify needed changes over time. It really supports that idea of making this a living plan and something that truly does guide the work and that adjusts with the child welfare system's needs. Another example that we've seen is a state setting up an ongoing committee to discuss needs, strengths, and opportunities related to recruiting, developing, and supporting families. By creating this standing group that meets regularly, the state ensures that there is time dedicated each month to assessing and planning for diligent recruitment and being able to make more real-time adjustments to the plans and the programs. We know one state that has taken a very focused, data-driven approach to developing county-specific targeted recruitment plans based on the specific needs for foster families in each county. These short-term recruitment plans set goals for recruiting and supporting families over a 6-month period. So there's a built-in time frame for assessing how effective the recruitment and support efforts were, reevaluating the county's data to inform the next phase of recruitment and support, and revising the recruitment and support strategies based on what the county learned during the previous 6 months. The process for developing these plans includes carving out time to learn from successes, continue to review data, and explore creative new approaches that the county might not have tried so that they can base their next 6-month plan on both lessons learned and new thinking. Those are just some of the examples that we're seeing around the country in ways that child welfare systems are approaching diligent recruitment in more comprehensive and creative ways. And now you'll get to hear more in depth about the way one state is doing this work. So I'll hand this over to Amy Martin from Missouri to share their experience. Amy?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Alicia. Missouri is very excited also about the Diligent Recruitment Navigator, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of the work that we have been doing in our state. Missouri's diligent recruitment planning began by identifying specifically the population of kids that we were looking at. I want to provide some clarification on this slide, as I think I have confused folks from the start. Our foster care population in Missouri is approximately 13,000 children currently. Of those 13,000 children, about 1,500 of those children are awaiting a permanency outcome through adoption or guardianship. Of that 1,500 kids, approximately 75% of them will be adopted by foster parents, relatives, or kin, leaving 12% of that population waiting for permanency and not having an identified available resource. So I've been a little bit confusing with the numbers there, but that is what I'm intending to get across today. We are a state-administered system with that population of kids. Approximately 26% of foster care cases in Missouri are case managed by a private case management contractor, which certainly points to the need for us to collaborate with those private case management contractors as we develop a diligent recruitment plan in this state. Additionally, the northwest corner of the state, which includes the Kansas City metropolitan area, is privatized for recruitment, licensure, and retention of foster and adoptive homes, which adds another twist to the coordination in the diligent recruitment plan. However, that also affords us some opportunities that we have not had previously because of the ability for those folks to be able to access resources that aren't as easily or readily available to a state-administered system. Missouri has a very active Adoption Resource Center network in Missouri, and so we have centers in St. Louis, Kansas City, the Springfield area, as well as in central Missouri. These Adoption Resource Centers are made up of foster and adoptive parents who we consider to be the tried and true throughout Missouri, who have the experience to help inform us on where and how adoptive parents need to be, adoptive and foster parents need to be recruited as well as supported. Additionally, Missouri has a very active faith community with a statewide faith committee and faith partners throughout the state. Missouri's approach to developing the recruitment plan and use of the Diligent Recruitment Navigator was a very linear approach. We took the plan, we looked at what was suggested for who would be at the table when you were having these initial discussions, and I scheduled an internal meeting with our state managers in the area of foster care, adoption, data management, continuous quality improvement, quality assurance, identified questions from the Diligent Recruitment Navigator that would provide the best possible opportunity for exploration with staff and our partners. We really sat down and looked at what we knew internally to be some of our high points and some of our low points, and identified the questions that would get to the most informative answers from each of our stakeholder partners. Once we had identified the questions that we wanted to take out to our stakeholder partners and these sister organizations, we enlisted the private case management partners, our Child and Family Services Review Committee, our recruitment and retention contractor in the Northwest in Jackson, our faith partners, our adoption resource centers, and I attended regional resource meetings for public and private resource staff around the state to review the questions, to make them aware of the Diligent Recruitment Navigator in case there were questions that we had missed that they really felt were essential to us to be addressing, and then took those very specifically identified query questions to those groups and gathered information for the first plan. We noticed some data themes arose as we were going through those meetings and through the questions. They were further identified in the individual meetings. Folks were telling me in the field that they really would like to have richer data on medical and emotional needs of children in care, and especially around their trauma histories. They were anxious to have sibling data for children seeking placement. They wanted zip code information for the community from which children were being removed, so in turn they could look at the community for recruitment of potential resources for those children to be placed with. They wanted demographic data on successful foster and adoptive parents, data on placements that disrupt, including the length of time to disruption and the reasons for disruption. Information on a referral source for foster parents, meaning who is the best referral source for folks who are considering foster care or adoption from the child welfare system. Let's do a poll question at this point. What data elements have you used to inform diligent recruitment planning? Variety of different responses for you there. You can indicate as many as you want. Lots of information coming in very quickly. Okay, I think we can go ahead and close the poll question and see the responses. Wonderful. So we see here the highest percentage in the information used to inform diligent recruitment planning is the needs of children in care, very consistent with what we were hearing in Missouri about medical, emotional needs, and as well as trauma history. Geographic data also, so common themes around the nation. After doing these individual meetings, we also asked that each of those groups that I was meeting with, the regional committees and the stakeholder committees and the adoption resource centers, that those folks have people that would be willing to tell us, give us feedback about how things were going and would participate in a centralized meeting as well as their regional meetings. Projects that resulted from each of those meetings has included recruitment posters, brochures, and web blast materials. one of the things that we heard from folks as I was going around doing these meetings was recruitment posters are great. They need to be very specific to the population of children and youth that we are seeking families for, and they need to be tailored to the audience that they are recruiting from in their specific areas. So what we did with our recruitment posters was developed a boilerplate recruitment poster and then allowed our Heart Gallery photos to be put into those posters as an example of the kids that we are searching for. So it makes it a very personalized, local theme when they're looking for kids in their area. When you see on the slide that I talk about web blast, some of the folks that came to us said that they had manufacturing companies or agencies within their communities who would be more than willing to do a web blast about the need for foster and adoptive families and maybe to even challenge folks within their organization. And so we developed web blast materials also. We did the development of a recruitment video, and in our recruitment video, because I know that that sounds like something everybody has done over the years, we took a very different approach to our recruitment video and did interviews with tried and true foster and adopted families, as well as kids who had been adopted from foster care and kids who had not been adopted and had exited without a permanency outcome. And that recruitment video is very moving to folks that are thinking about this process, and it makes it from the voices of folks from their community. We revised our Heart Gallery process. We had been doing an annual Heart Gallery like many of the states of the nation, and we decided that we wanted to step it up a bit and start doing a quarterly registration for the Heart Gallery so that we continued to put in the public the numbers of kids that are available and that folks will never given the opportunity to walk past the Heart Gallery and say, I've seen that before, because it's constantly changing and they're seeing all of the kids that are available. The other opportunity with the revision of the Heart Gallery is for folks to see on a much more speedy timetable the kids that are achieving permanency and finding their forever families. We've done an expansion of our relationship with our adoption exchange. We're very fortunate to have an adoption exchange office here in Missouri and the support of the Complete Adoption Exchange in Colorado. And so we are expanding our relationship with them to increase the recruitment and retention of families. We are maximizing our use of the Adopt US Kids website. And then we are exploring flexibility of training mediums used with prospective families, including in-person, online, and self-study trainings. We heard from families that they are needing to use these different mediums. We continue to use 50% of our training as in-person training, but have other trainings that are available, which allows some flexibility for families.
Thanks, Amy. I have to jump in here and tell everybody about my relationship with Amy. And it looks like maybe I've jumped in here a little too soon. So Amy, you want to do that slide, and then I'm going to razz you a bit?
Sure. The planning and implementation processes and the partnering and the collecting and analyzing of data and recruitment strategies are ongoing. As we've talked about continually throughout this webinar, this is a living plan. It's an ongoing plan. It's real time, and it should be concentrated on support and as well as recruitment of foster and adoptive families. And so we have seen that as the outcome of our plan here in Missouri, and we're very excited. As I was looking back this afternoon on updating, I can see where it is living and breathing. It will never be something that we just simply look at one time per year. So I could continue to talk so that Jill cannot razz me, but I will leave it with you there.
I jumped in too early. You know, it's always about me, and I need to talk more. So thank you, Amy, for telling us about the work in Missouri. And I want to tell you all that Amy and I have been colleagues for many, many years, and as I said, we've got a great relationship, and we do often rouse each other. And I'm going to tell you more about some of the tribal work that we're doing around the Diligent Recruitment Plan Navigator and their development of a Diligent Recruitment Plan. But before I do that, Amy, I was hoping that I could, as I was really listening to you, I was thinking about some additional questions. So I was hoping I could ask you a couple of additional questions.
Sure.
And then before I do that, I have to tell you that as Alicia was telling you about our development of the Diligent Recruitment Navigator, I had gone to a meeting with Amy, and she had the entire Diligent Recruitment Navigator printed out. She had it tagged with, different Post-it notes, and I said, hey, Amy, I was super excited, wanted to see that somebody was using it. It was like, have a party and hope that people come. Well, we hoped that people would use the Navigator, and Amy was certainly living proof of that, and so she shared a little bit with me about how they were using it. So thank you for that, Amy. So could you tell us a little bit, Amy, about your process after your CFSP was submitted? So I know you talked about this being a living document, but could you go into a little bit more detail about your process?
Sure. One of the things that I talked about in the beginning was that I had gone around and done these meetings as we were in our planning year with each of these different teams. And so I kept touching base with those folks afterwards. We're very involved with our adoption resource centers here. They are a big part of our recruitment. And so in order to be able to implement and roll out any of the new initiatives that we were doing, we involved those folks. Again, I talked about we were expanding our relationship with the Adoption Exchange. As we worked through our Adoption Heart Gallery and made changes to that, we also identified that we really needed to be very cognizant of kids that were being featured on the Adopt US Kids website. And so one of the large partnerships that we will be working on with the Adoption Exchange is trying to keep all of those profiles timely and every child to have the opportunity to be featured. One of the other things that has come out of the planning and implementation, I talked about the strong relationship that we have with our faith organizations here in Missouri. And we have had the Global Orphan Project supporting us here in specifically or principally in the Jackson County region. And they are working with us to expand further out in the a lot of support. Pardon me?
I thought we lost you. You went silent there for a minute.
Oh, I must have just moved the wrong way. They are doing some support work for foster and adoptive families, and especially in the relative and kin realm. When you have relatives and kin who are more than capable and very interested in taking these children, and they may have a need for some specific resources. And so we've expanded that also. So that's been a huge piece of implementation that has occurred and partnering. Did I answer your question?
You did, thank you. So I have another one though. So I hope you weren't going to go anywhere. So earlier in your presentation you talked about the data themes of information that you were hearing in your individual meetings as you went around the state.
Yes.
And you talked about rich data on medical and emotional needs of children in care and sibling data. Did you have that data, or was that something that you had to ask for, or
we have some limited emotional and medical data that is captured within our profiling in our SACWIS system. But we do not have as rich a data as what folks were wanting from us. And so how we really have addressed that is not as much in a data report as it is in the information that's being shared about children in their social summaries as they're moving through their alternative care spell, that we're capturing that information where it's readily available for workers then to share and to have for reference when they're looking for families. Alongside of that, we're also looking at our system to determine how to better capture especially the trauma history information on kids, which will get us most times to the emotional and medical piece.
Great, thanks. So you talked a little bit about your work with Adopt U.S. Kids, and I swore I didn't slip her a 20 to talk about Adopt U.S. Kids, but can you talk about other policy and practice changes that you've made or do you plan to make as a result of your implementation of your diligent recruitment plan?
Well, I don't know that I can talk so much about the policy changes that we're going to make as much as policy enforcement. For a number of years in Missouri, we have tasked our staff with making sure that children who are available for adoption and seeking placement, that they're featured on the Adopt U.S. Kids website. And so now we're going to step it up a bit with enlisting the help of the Adoption Exchange and pushing more thoroughly. The change to our policy, as I referenced the difference in the social summaries, that's also a piece that not necessarily a policy change as much as just when you're outlining information regarding children that you're able to capture that information thoroughly and that you're keeping that in the forefront of your mind, that you might be working through the alternative care spell of a child, but it's an entire continuum. And as you're looking forward to their permanency outcome, you're going to need to have that information readily available to share with any resource families and also to be cognizant of as you're doing that recruitment.
Great, great. So one last question, and again, thank you for letting me put you on the spot here a little bit. So can you just tell me a little bit more about what your future plans related to implementing your diligent recruitment plan in Missouri might be, and what are you excited about?
We are very excited about what the data is telling us about where we need to be expanding to. We are involved in the ongoing assessment of the efficacy of our privatization pilot in Jackson County in the Northwest region to determine the promising practices that are being used in that contract, and so what pieces of that could we overlay onto recruitment throughout the state. We are expanding our outreach for new adoptive and foster resources through use of our current foster and adoptive resources, having them be our recruiters. An expansion of the recruitment materials that we'll have available as we assess whether or not these posters, brochures, and web blasts are working. We're continually assessing to see if there are other places that we need to be reaching. How do we refine those materials? How do we make that the best message to get to folks? We have the opportunity this fall to explore with one of our local communications agencies for some commercials with the same theme around life is better with kids, which is what those posters and brochures are developed on, and to be able to expand into radio and the web. We have developed some additional partnerships outside of the partners that I mentioned as we started to develop the diligent recruitment plan, expansion of partnerships with other school districts and professional organizations so that they're featuring our recruitment materials in their newsletters. We have the opportunity to also evaluate. We have started here in Missouri. We've become a safe home assessment pilot state in our St. Louis area, and we're feeling like through assessing families more thoroughly, we're able to see what their needs are also. I tie that back to our staff asking for why placements are disrupting, and we felt like placements were disrupting in many cases because families didn't understand or have a clear message of what their expectations would be. So along that theme, we not only refined our recruitment materials to give a very clear picture of what the expectation of a foster and adoptive family is, but we also took a look at how we're doing that assessment. And in that assessment, it's a very friendly assessment to come forward and try to equip families and support them with everything they're going to need to do that. We continue to refine the data that we're getting The zip code information that I talked about and the school district information, that's going to the stakeholder groups so that they're aware of the numbers of kids that are in their neighborhoods who are needing placements. And then again, I just would reference back to that continued partnership with our faith and community partners to ensure an outreach into all communities and to make sure that we're reaching all possible families. And to make sure that families understand the true need for these kids to have a permanency outcome. One of the other things that we've done here in Missouri is expand our use of the Permanency Pact so that even in cases where we're unable to find permanency through adoption or guardianship, we're assuring that kids have strong adults who will walk with them through all chapters of their life. So those are some of the things that we're most excited about and working on here, in addition to a very thorough trauma initiative that we've got going on here, which will feed into getting those trauma histories and the medical and emotional information on the kids so that we can, again, thoroughly explore and inform prospective resource families.
Well, thank you so much, Amy. Hopefully that wasn't too painful, or I might owe you a coffee or something to put you on the spot. But thank you so much. It's so exciting to hear about all the great work that's happening in Missouri and along, the work of conducting diligent recruitment planning. So thanks again. Not only for the work you're doing.
I have that binder with me, which has all the dog-eared pieces on the diligent recruitment plan, so I haven't quit carrying it, Jill.
Great. Thanks. That's great. All right. So now let's jump into talking about our tribal child welfare system. So we at the NRC know that planning and implementation for diligent recruitment looks very different across different child welfare systems, and that of tribal child welfare systems have unique strengths and dynamics that affect them creating diligent recruitment plans and programs. And so we wanted to make it possible for you to hear directly from a tribal child welfare leader about their experiences with diligent recruitment planning, but unfortunately we aren't able to have them join us for today's webinar. However, I did want to take some time to share some information based on our work with tribal child welfare systems on diligent recruitment efforts. So again, we realize that tribes are in various stages of developing and structuring a recruitment, development, and support program. But ideas about diligent recruitment can be helpful regardless of size or formality of a tribal program. So many tribes that already have foster care programs are looking at putting together their recruitment plans and are gaining information as to what this could look like and how they can develop and implement them into their current child welfare programs. So regardless of where a tribe is in the process of developing or strengthening their program for recruiting and supporting families for children in foster care, there are useful tools and approaches to consider. So we designed, as Alicia said earlier, the Diligent Recruitment Navigator to have a customizable option specifically for tribes. So that includes questions focused on tribal child welfare systems. We again know that several tribes have used or are using the Navigator in multiple ways, and so we want to just share with you a couple of examples. So the Mille-Lac Band of Ojibwe, I hope I got that right, used the Navigator by identifying discussion questions similar to Amy that they felt were relevant to start discussions with their staff for developing their recruitment plan and foster care program. The questions were facilitated with the assistance of NRC staff, and as a result of the information gathered, they were able to develop a recruitment plan. The development of that plan was also a catalyst for helping them to develop the type of policies and procedures that they wanted to put into practice and identify data elements for data collection. They're reporting that this has helped them to build their new database system and helped guide the work that they want to do for quality services, as well as developing their resource families and staff. So another key approach we see tribes using is engaging their tribal council early on and in ongoing ways as part of developing a comprehensive approach to diligent recruitment that will meet the tribe's needs and be aligned with the community's values and traditions. Some tribes are also building in ways to assess what is working and not working for their diligent recruitment efforts using continuous quality improvement approaches. This ongoing learning and assessment is key, especially for any child welfare system working with scarce resources. And we realize that this isn't unique to tribes, that this also relates to states. So this process involves determining your criteria for success and how you will know if you've been successful. So the Osage Nation in Oklahoma developed a comprehensive diligent recruitment plan and are continually updating their plan as they meet identified goals and objectives. The Osage Nation and all of their staff utilize their plan as a way to tell their story through their data, strategies, and implementation of applying the work with resource families, with leadership, and with their community. So with technical assistance from the NRCDR, the Mille Band of Ojibwe and the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians are using their diligent recruitment plans to identify areas where they would like to build current program services and build new processes that are reflective of their culture. They're using their diligent recruitment plans as a way to address compliance with required federal and grant regulations, to develop an understanding among their staff and community of the need for foster resource homes for their Native children, and most importantly, to be transparent about their services and keep their Native children in homes that will maintain their cultural ties and keep them in their tribal communities. So lastly, tribes are really looking at ways to streamline certification standards and policies to meet Title 40 requirements for Title 40 agreements and or in preparation of pursuing Direct 40. As our NRC partners with tribes to provide capacity building assistance, we see many tribes striving to look comprehensively at their data with or without a database system and gain insights into how they can do recruitment in their tribal communities that work for them. These strategies truly become their own. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Alicia to talk about some additional ways the Diligent Recruitment Navigator can be helpful. Alicia?
Thanks, Jill. So now that you all have heard this great information from Amy about how Missouri is approaching the process of developing and implementing comprehensive diligent recruitment, as well as some examples from Jill about what our National Resource Center is seeing about diligent recruitment planning and implementation in tribal child welfare systems, I hope you're getting some helpful ideas and inspiration about ways to strengthen your own planning and implementation processes around diligent recruitment. As I mentioned earlier, the Diligent Recruitment Navigator is a very flexible tool that we're really excited about, and it can support your diligent recruitment efforts in multiple ways and at multiple points in the process. As you heard from Amy, she still carries around her printed out Navigator with lots of tabs, so it is getting well used and well loved, we hope. So it's really an ongoing resource that we want to highlight some more ways that you can use it. It really is not at all a one-size-fits-all tool or something that can only be used in one way. And in addition to what we see from Amy, we see other child welfare systems and child welfare leaders using the tool in multiple ways. So we want to highlight some of those examples right now. One of the ways that we see is for planning purposes, such as for developing or strengthening a diligent recruitment plan or program, such as for your Child and Family Services Plan, your CFSP, or your APSR, your Annual Progress and Services Report, or other recruitment planning efforts. So for those more structured planning processes, it can be a really useful tool for doing that initial plan or those updates. We also see the Navigator being used for guiding implementation of diligent recruitment plans or programs, including identifying and helping you prioritize steps in the implementation process. Since we've talked before about all of the elements that go into comprehensive diligent recruitment, we know sometimes you can't do all of those things at once, but so talking through some of the questions in the Navigator can help you think about prioritizing and sequencing to really see the work moving forward. We also see great value in using the Navigator for ongoing stakeholder engagement, especially to help you broaden the scope of stakeholders and potential partners or current partners that you include in your diligent recruitment efforts. As we heard from Amy, she's partnering, and in Missouri they're partnering with multiple groups, and one of the things that we see other child welfare systems doing as well is using the Navigator as a structure for having discussions, including with long-standing partners who may not have been involved in some of the internal planning processes before, so really engaging them in some new ways. Another way you can use the Navigator that we think is quite helpful is structuring the way you review and discuss your data. This can be particularly helpful as you continue to strengthen your own data collection and your use of data, so you may revise how you use data and the formats you find most helpful for ongoing review. For example, some of the questions in the Navigator talk about what formats of information and what frequency of reports will be most helpful for us to plan and for us to know whether our recruitment and development and support efforts are being effective. Another way the Navigator can be quite helpful is for helping you assess progress in various areas of diligent recruitment. As you implement your diligent recruitment efforts, the Navigator questions can help you identify areas where you're having success, which really is important to recognize and celebrate and to try to build on. The questions can also help you identify areas that may require more focus or new strategies to reach your goals. A slightly different way that we've seen people using the Navigator in child welfare systems is to help build partners and stakeholders' understanding of what comprehensive diligent recruitment is and of how they can help and be part of the process. Even the simple step of just sharing a copy of the Navigator with your partners or potential partners can help those people develop a deeper understanding of the many important considerations that go into the process of developing a child welfare system's capacity to recruit, prepare, develop, and support a pool of families who can meet the needs of children in care. That kind of awareness raising can really be a great starting point, especially if you have partners who are interested in playing a stronger role with your system, or you have new partners that you're reaching out to. It can help you all have a common set of discussion questions to rally around and to talk through what are the different ways that everyone can come together to support the work. So, now that you've heard a lot of information on the webinar about various ideas from the field and ways we're seeing diligent recruitment play out in practice, we hope you're finding that helpful, and we also want to highlight some other specific resources and publications that we think you might find helpful moving forward. So our National Resource Center for Diligent Recruitment really does have extensive information, resources, and expertise to help you develop or strengthen your diligent recruitment plans and programs, and help you as you move through various stages of implementation for those plans and programs. We have publications on our website that can help you explore specific topics related to diligent recruitment planning and implementation, including a document that specifically highlights ways to use our Diligent Recruitment Navigator to support your implementation, and another brief publication on top priorities for data elements to collect and analyze related to your prospective and current foster adoptive families. As you've heard us say at various points throughout the webinar today, that use of data, especially on families, is so helpful in giving you a clear picture of what your recruitment and support needs are and where your strengths are as well, so you can really build on those. We also have resources available on recruiting families for specific populations of children, such as sibling groups, older youth, and resources on recruiting families within specific communities of prospective parents. We also have information about ways to really develop and support families beginning from their first inquiry about foster care or adoption all the way through until after placement. We're particularly excited to highlight a relatively new publication called Support Matters, Lessons from the Field on Services for Adoptive, Foster, and Kinship Care Families. This guide provides detailed information about family support program models from around the country, ways to assess support needs in your community among foster adoptive families, ideas for implementation strategies and how to have effective implementation, and how to sustain programs, as well as having information about ways to evaluate the effectiveness of support services and how to design an effective evaluation approach. If you've been in some of the other National Resource Center for Diligent Recruitment webinars we've held this year, you may recognize that we're highlighting some of the same resources we've talked about before. And we do this because we really feel that these issues are important and need to be highlighted again. We think that using data is extremely important in diligent recruitment planning, and we think that family support is also a critical component of comprehensive diligent recruitment. So some other ways that we can really help support your work in pursuing more comprehensive, multifaceted diligent recruitment. Some additional resources on our website. We highlight ideas from the field, since we know that people really want to hear what else is happening around the child welfare system, what are other states, tribes, and territories and counties doing to make this work. So we have that highlighted throughout our website, ideas from various child welfare systems, as well as materials and lessons learned directly from the diligent recruitment grantees that the Children's Bureau has funded over multiple years. We think being able to see what those grantees have done, where they've had a really strong focus on diligent recruitment, can be helpful for the rest of the field. In addition to these resources on our website, our National Resource Center offers opportunities for child welfare systems to connect with their peers on the topic of diligent recruitment, including through a peer-to-peer network for states and territories, and another peer-to-peer network specifically for tribal child welfare systems. So at this point, we're going to start the question and answer section of the webinar. So we'll address at least some of the questions that have come in from the chat window during the webinar. And this is where we get to put all of us as speakers on the spot. So thank you for sending in your questions. Jill and Amy, I hope you're both ready for me to send some questions your way. So one question that we got is, how do you continuously revise the diligent recruitment plan to respond to the changing context and new needs as they emerge over time? And I'll start answering this, and then Jill, I'll see if you have anything to add, or if you have anything to add, Amy. One of the things, as I mentioned, that we really think is important is using your data in valuable ways and having data reports in formats that are really helpful for you to continually understand the needs of your child welfare system. And as we've highlighted on this webinar, we do think our Diligent Recruitment Navigator as a discussion guide can provide a helpful structure for doing some of that ongoing assessment. So you can look at some of the questions in the Navigator that look at what are our current, what's the population of children currently in care and what are their needs, what's our pool of families, how well do those match, and you can have ongoing discussions to strategize as well as to look ahead to what are trends that you're seeing in your data that you might need to plan for. For instance, if you're seeing more young children entering care, that might mean a shift in how you think about recruiting families and what the messages are at initial inquiry and orientation and training. Jill, if there's anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the examples that you gave in the beginning, Alicia, about when you have established groups that are meeting regularly, I mean, that's one way that you can reassess what are the current needs. So in one state, we know that when they do come together, that's one of the things they do. So what are the current needs? What are the kinds of families that we need to be recruiting for? What are the areas in which we need to recruit? What are the messages we need to be sending? And so I think by having that regular conversation, that's certainly one way to, to update, to change, to reflect your current needs.
And Amy, would you add anything to that?
Well, I would agree that because the plan is a living document, as you're continually reviewing your data, you're going to see which of your efforts are the most fruitful. And then you're able to shift the spotlight in other ways and to look at backing up and determining how to most effectively reach those populations then. So if you see a dramatic impact in siblings, or you see a dramatic impact from using some community information or zip code or school district information, then you can shift those learnings to other areas of the plan. And I think that's the beauty of this being a fluid document, that you're constantly reassessing and looking back at what's working well, and then learning and building upon those things that are working well.
Great.
Alicia, if I could add something that's sort of off the question, but the makeup of those groups, and we've seen that in multiple states. We were talking about one specific state when we were talking earlier, but the makeup of those groups is, a foster parent, a recruiter, a licensing worker. So it could be a permanency worker, it could be a church, a faith-based group. The richness of those groups is that one, recruitment is everyone's business, as we always talk about, but that really kind of brings it to light. And then I think that it also, when everyone's looking at the data across units or divisions or areas of work, you can really look at the impact of the data on everybody's work. And so I think that, not only does it bring it to life by continuing to look at the data, but it brings it to life by having a variety of people in the group, that it's not just a recruiter's responsibility, or it's not just a community provider's responsibility, that it's really everybody's responsibility, and everybody brings something to the process. So I just wanted to add that.
I think what you said, Jill, is correct. I think you have a lot of aha moments in those groups where something that might seem very obvious hasn't been as obvious until you had a new person around the table.
Great. Thank you both. Our next question, I'm going to give this to you, Jill, to start. It says, I work for a private foster care agency. How would I find out more information about the state's plan? And we may have multiple people on the webinar who aren't, as we saw from the poll questions early on, not everyone here is familiar with what their child welfare system's diligent recruitment plan says. So can you respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the state's diligent recruitment plan is a public document and should be available to you. I think a great place to start would be the complexity of this is who writes that plan could be different in every single state. So I can't say, private provider, go to this person in your state and that's going to be the right person. So I would go to the people that you have a relationship with. So is it your foster care or adoption manager who can get you a copy of this plan? It could already be on your website, on the state's website. But again, as I said in the very beginning, I mean, this plan should be in the hands of all of the stakeholders, all of the staff that are doing this work, to be able to build on it and to help carry it out and implement a good diligent recruitment plan. So I think that's where I would start. Again, I'm sorry I can't give you one specific answer and who to go to because it's different in every single state. So, but I would start with who you have a relationship with, and again, it is a public document, so you should have easy access to it. Did you want to add anything, Alicia? Or
yeah, I would just add one of the things that we've heard, I think, in some of our work with child welfare systems, especially as they've talked about using the Diligent Recruitment Navigator. One more creative use of it that we didn't highlight earlier is that sometimes partners who are not part of the public child welfare system have said that they've printed out the copy, a customized copy of the Diligent Recruitment Navigator for their child welfare system and taken it to that state agency or the county agency, I'm not sure if it's happened in a tribal context, and basically said, we want to be part of discussions about all of these elements. We want to come to the table really and see how we can contribute to better outcomes for children and families. So that's one way that we've heard of private agencies, nonprofit agencies, volunteer groups, foster and adoptive parent groups speaking up and saying that they want to be part of the process and offering up their assistance to the child welfare system. So that's another way to think about getting to that table and helping, helping with the planning so that it isn't just an after the fact piece where you're getting to see a plan after it's been written.
Thanks for that. That was great.
Sure. Amy, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would just think on the heels of what Jill was saying about accessing the plan, I think our state adoption program managers or state foster care program managers listing would be an excellent place for anybody to start.
Great, thank you.
To identify those people and make those contacts.
Mm-hmm. So another question that came in, I think, Jill, while you were talking about tribal child welfare systems using the Navigator, this question asks, is this just for Title 40 eligible tribes or any tribes with their own child welfare program? So I think the question is asking whether the Navigator is a useful tool or an available tool for only 40 eligible tribes or for all tribes. And I would say that we certainly think of the Diligent Recruitment Navigator as being a tool that's useful in various ways for all tribal child welfare systems, whether or not they're receiving direct 40 or they have a 40 agreement with the state, but that it's certainly not a requirement that you be receiving direct 40 or have a 40 agreement. But certain questions may be more or less applicable to the work in an individual tribe depending on their funding structure and their relationship with any other child welfare systems. Jill, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I think it's a useful tool for anyone, and I think again not just for tribal systems, but one of the things that we've talked about with county-based systems is that a state is the required person. They're required to submit a diligent recruitment plan as part of their CFSP, their Children and Family Services Plan, but that we've seen really creative uses of the Navigator and downloading it and creating a plan for a county within a state or with regions within a state, regardless of how they're administered. So if it's a state-administered system, we've seen it used as a guide in a particular region. And so I think yes, absolutely. I think that there's a usefulness regardless of the type of system you come from. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Amy, this next one I'm going to put primarily to you. Someone asked if you can go into more detail about what the Permanency Pact is and what that looks like.
Yes, the Permanency Pact is available through the Foster Club. And Foster Club has an actual document, looks like a contract, that youth who are approaching emancipation or aging out of the foster care system can, along with the assistance of their worker, sit down with helpful adults who are their resources, who are their go-to people. I will not talk to it half as eloquently as the Foster Club All-Stars do, but they talk about how they've had people that are their go-to people for when they have mechanical issues with their car or when they want to negotiate a new lease or any of those things that we know in young adulthood folks have to get used to doing. And so what they do is sit down with this document and ask those adults who are their supports to sign with them and commit to being that person that they can come to ongoing. And so I talked earlier about how that might be one person that is a support to them, or that might be multiple people that are support to them. But it's an extra step. Unfortunately, we see too many kids that are exiting from foster care without the permanency through adoption or guardianship. I probably have assumed erroneously over the years that these relationships through an informal arrangement or a permanency pact would turn into adoption or guardianship, and I was schooled by some of our Foster Club All-Stars that they don't necessarily see that as needing the legal relationship, but they do see it as needing a commitment from someone who's going to be there for them ongoing, sometimes as simply as the holidays. And so if you will go to the fosterclub.com website, it will talk about the Permanency Pact and how to use it. And we're just in the process. We've had Foster Club All-Stars has come into Missouri and done training with some of our older youth staff, and we're using that with older youth who are exiting to make sure that we're sharing those connections.
Great. Thanks, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
While we're doing some follow-up questions on some other things you mentioned, I'll do the next one for you as well. And then I know Jill might have other things to add. Someone else said they'd like more information about the Heart Gallery. They're not very familiar with that as a model. So can you talk a little bit more about what the Heart Gallery is and how you use it?
Sure. We stole the Heart Gallery idea from New Mexico, actually. And the Heart Gallery is the presentation of kids who are awaiting permanency through adoption through a picture gallery. And it really allows folks to see exactly the kids that are available, the ages, and that we do have sibling groups, and a little bit about the circumstances. So we have moved here in Missouri to more of a media gallery where we have a disc, a CD that goes out, or DVD that goes out that can be used in churches or with civic organizations that features the kids that are available. In addition, we have a print book that talks about all the requirements of being a resource parent, and it has success stories from kids and families who have obtain permanency through adoption. And so I talked about earlier, we do a quarterly promotion of that event. Previously, we would have one registration time at the beginning of the year, and folks would send in information about kids who were waiting for adoption. We would send out professional photographers to take those pictures. We would get a team of people together to write a profile about the children, and then we would use those same photos throughout the year. And what we were seeing was, as fast as society moves now, kids were finding forever families. We were updating those photos, and then you had people going to the venues and seeing the photos. So when we went to a media gallery, we were able to more quickly feature kids who were available. And so we have a greater opportunity. You don't have to wait until the end of the calendar year. And so it's just a very moving photo gallery of kids who are available for folks to see and to make a connection through the photo and the profile.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jill, is there anything else you'd add to what Amy already shared?
No, I think she did great.
Great. All right. Jill, I think it's a good question for you with the whole National Resource Center perspective. This question asks, do you utilize targeted recruitment strategies with comprehensive diligent recruitment planning?
So yes, I mean, we would encourage everybody to use lots of different strategies. So whether it's general recruitment or targeted recruitment, that a comprehensive diligent recruitment plan would encompass all types, child-specific recruitment. So it would include every type of recruitment. Also would focus on both foster and adoption and kinship families. So yes, absolutely. I don't know if, Amy, you want to add any specific ways that you all have addressed targeted recruitment in your plan?
Yes, we've addressed targeted recruitment because we were a grantee, diligent recruitment grantee, and we had an extreme recruitment project here in Missouri, which involved mining the records of kids who had been in care the longest and looking for relative and kin resources to go back and identify. And out of the extreme recruitment grant cycle, we also identified that we really needed to be looking on the front end for specific children. So we have a 30 days to family model in Missouri also, where when kids are entering care, we are looking for those family and kin resources. So we are doing some very specific and targeted recruitment in addition to the general recruitment efforts here.
Thank you both. So here's another question for you, Amy. Thanks for letting us just continue to put you in the hot seat. This person's asking, they're wondering what the cost was of having a video made for recruitment purposes. And if you aren't comfortable going into detailed finances, that's certainly fine. But we're wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you made that happen for having a video.
The video is a prime example of the video cost was absorbed by our contractor in the Northwest and Jackson region, and everybody will recall me saying that by our moving to this contract for recruitment and retention, it was affording some opportunities that we had not previously had because the state budget is limited, but the contract budget was able to produce the video, and we were allowed then to also use it. We had done some of the videotaping of the foster families and kids who had exited the permanency or kids who had not prior, so it was very much a shared effort in how we were getting some of the footage filmed, but the production itself was at the cost of the contractor, so I don't even know what the cost was. It was a creative financing effort in the ability to use some of the funds that are available to our private contractors.
Very nicely said. Great. Well, and I know. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say that for jurisdictions that don't have money, I know that Adopt US Kids has produced several videos that might be beneficial not necessarily for commercial purposes, but for use at orientations or training. One of the videos that we produced is called The Road to Adoption and Foster Care. And I actually just had an opportunity to view it recently, and I think it's really, really good. And so that's a free resource that you can email us, and we can send you a copy. So even for states that might not have, you know, the money to be able to produce a video, there may be resources through Adopt US Kids that might be able to help you in that way.
Thanks, Jill. And just to piggyback on that, I think one of the things that is interesting to think about is, to use Amy's term about creative approaches, even going beyond creative financing approaches. I think with Adopt US Kids, we've been fortunate enough to have partnerships with people who are interested in donating their time, who want to volunteer, and who have experience and skill in video production. And so many of the videos that Adopt US Kids has produced over the years has been, to a large extent, due to the availability of someone who really wants to contribute their time, and they have traveled around interviewing families, interviewing workers, doing the video editing, and really producing great quality videos, I think. So I think that's another way to think about if you're looking in your communities for partners who can help support recruitment. As some places do with their heart galleries, they can get donated services from photographers who will take pictures of children. In other places, you might be able to find people with video production expertise who could then contribute those as their way of helping out. So it doesn't have to be a full cost, out-of-pocket expense for the child welfare system or for even a contracted agency. Great. So Amy, there's a lot of interest in some questions coming in about the 30 Days to Family program. So I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about that, and someone has asked if there's a way to get a copy of the 30 days of your 30 Days to Family plan. So I don't know if you can address that specifically, but can you just talk at least a little bit more about?
Is my email anywhere in this production on the web?
I don't think we have it on there, but we can follow up with with one of our attendees here for some of these questions so that we can get people in touch with you. Or you in touch with them.
I would be happy for anyone to email me for the plan for 30 Days to Family or for Extreme Recruitment. What I can tell you just briefly is that the 30 Days to Family program infuses the same principles as Extreme Recruitment. The difference is you're looking at the information that the parents are providing and that the child is providing as they're entering care, as opposed to mining files for information that may go back months or years when the child entered care to get the most appropriate resources. So you're really sitting down within the first 30 days and finding out from kids and families who's the most important within your system, who should we be approaching about considering placement, and beyond that, who should we be approaching to provide support to your family as you work toward reunification.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jill, here's a question I'll put to you first, and then Amy, you may have other thoughts as well. This is saying, based on your experience, how can we better recruit for sibling groups and teams?
So I think that Amy sort of outlined a couple of different things. I think that one of the things is to show, and something that Adopt US Kids has done, is to show pictures of siblings. So I think one is to talk about the need. So in your recruitment materials, they should reflect your current need. I think the other thing is that we've seen states do is to have orientations specifically for families that are interested in parenting sibling groups. The same would go for older youth. I think that oftentimes it's surprising to me that oftentimes states are still using pictures of younger children, knowing that their need is for older children or for larger sibling groups. So I think, again, it's about using those stakeholder groups and letting your faith communities know and letting your recruitment partners know what the current need is, and that being part of your messaging. Is that not just that you need foster homes or you need adoptive homes, but that you need foster and adoptive homes for sibling groups or large sibling groups or for older youth. So that's one of the things that I would suggest. Amy, do you have any other things that you'd want to add?
Well, back to what you were saying about some examples that I had given, we made sure that our message was clear, that when we were working on recruitment materials, we were having teens talk about how important it was to them to have permanency, and how important it was for them often within their sibling group for their siblings to have the permanency also. And so it was just a realistic picture. I agree wholeheartedly with you, Jill, that we've done ourselves a disservice by showing pictures of smaller kids, and that was one of the impetus for us using our Heart Gallery photos, so we were never pulling down any kind of stock photos of kids from the internet. We were using real kids who were looking for placement so that we were keeping the message real all along.
And I think that's another great example about the use of youth. So letting the youth tell their story, having a youth if you're going to have a recruitment orientation or for sibling groups or older youth, having an older youth or having sibling groups there, or having foster parents that have parented large sibling groups, to sort of dispel the myths that are out there about parenting youth or parenting sibling groups, having them come to your training sessions. Again, I don't think that you can send the message enough. So I think you have to have it in multiple places. We've also seen some really creative things with youth going to recruitment fairs or going to recruitment booths and having them be part of the messenger. So again, going back to if you have youth advisory boards in your state or you have access to older youth, 9 out of 10 times they're more than willing to help you recruit foster and adoptive families for older youth. So, Alicia, I don't know if you want to.
Another piece that we've done in Missouri is doing meet and greets for families who have expressed an interest in caring for children who are older in the residential facility, in the residential center. And so that's another piece. It's real world. Some of our kids are going to be residing in residential, and so bringing families in and having the opportunity to see these kids and have the opportunity to engage with them in an activity that they both enjoy is another opportunity.
Great, thank you both. And a related question came in about having strong confidentiality restrictions in some jurisdictions and making it hard to then use photos of those real youth. And so they were asking if there were any other ideas to really make things personal, make that recruitment message personal. And I think you both touched on that in a couple of ways. Another thing that I think is helpful to think about that we at the National Resource Center and at Adoptive Kids broadly, we've talked with multiple child welfare systems about the idea of developing a speakers bureau or a bureau of spokespeople who can really be voices for your child welfare system, and including foster families, adoptive families, youth who've been in foster care, kinship families, people maybe who've worked in the system, and really having that pool of people who can speak in various settings about the needs of the child welfare system, the need for foster, adoptive, and kinship family, what kind of support helps, all of that. And so one way to think about that is, like Jill was saying, engaging some of the older youth maybe to be speakers at an orientation or at a recruitment event, but also thinking about, are there families who have adopted children and where the parents can give permission for photos to be used, things like that, but where they can talk about, here was our process in adopting a teen or adopting a sibling group. Or you can have people who were formerly in foster care who are now young adults or older, and they can talk about that experience and what would be needed. So even if you're not able to feature and have individual youth who are still in foster care speaking at some of these events, there are ways to bring in some of those voices and really help make it personal, to help break down some of the ideas that people may have about what would it be like to have a teen in my home? So I think that's another way to think about it. And I will just highlight that on the National Resource Center for Diligent Recruitment's website, nrcdr.org, we do have some materials specifically about recruiting families for older youth, recruiting families for sibling groups, good practice principles for sibling groups. So there are some of those very targeted content areas that people might find helpful. And we have gotten through many of the questions that came in, although not all of them, but we thank you for all of the questions you've been submitting. And now we need to wrap it up at this point. If we didn't get to your question and you have additional follow-up questions, I know we have some requests for getting some materials from Amy, please feel free to be in touch with us and we will get you connected to those answers. But now I'm going to hand it over to you, Jill.
Thanks. Thanks, Alicia. I really want to, again, thank you all for your participation, and I want to have a special thank you to Amy for the time that she spent with us today and to prepare for this webinar. I want to thank the technical support behind the scenes. There's lots of people behind the scenes helping us keep things moving. And thank you, Alicia. So again, thank you for your participation in the webinar. We really appreciate it if you fill out the evaluation form that you will see on your computer screen when the presentation ends. We really value your feedback and we'll use it to help inform future webinars. So please visit our website, nrcdr.org. This webinar will be archived on our website. If you have questions, you can email us at nrcdr@adoptuskids.org. And everyone will receive a follow-up email from us when the archive is available, so you can send it to your partners. So again, thank you so much for your time and your participation. I hope everybody has a great afternoon. Thank you.